welcome to another edition of Your Property Matters with me, Mark Stern. And today I'm joined by my special guest, Tom Gabriel from Gabriel Planning Solutions. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well, thank you.
So I've invited you along here today to have a chat with you because I'm always getting asked by people when they're viewing properties to buy, homes to live in, investment properties to do up. What are the rules and regulations? Can I do this? Can I put an extension on? Can I go into the loft? Can I take walls down? And I thought I was excited to actually speak to a man in the know that knows all about these things. So start off, just tell me a little bit about yourself, what you've done and what you actually do.
Me, I've been in planning for 22 or so years. In that time, I've worked for a number of local authorities in London and the Northern Home Counties. I've worked for a variety worked with a variety of different application types, from householders to major developments to residential schemes. As well as working for local authorities, I have spent about 11 years working for Gabriel Planning Solutions, my own consultancy. Again, advising the public on planning applications, submitting planning applications, preparing plans, the whole planning remit.
Right. Okay. Great. So, tell me, who actually does need a planning consultant?
In short, anyone who is looking to put a planning application is not familiar with the planning system. The planning system can be quite complex, even for more simple household applications. Those who are unaware of whether an extension requires permission or not is advised to speak to a planning consultant to ascertain whether permission is indeed required or not. A consultant is able to make the planning application process run more smoothly, A, from advising as to the need for permissions, and B, to submitting the application and making sure that it achieves permission from the local authority. In the event that an application is not successful and is refused permission, the consultant can converse with the local authority as to ways to make the application more acceptable, the resubmission more acceptable, and possibly appealing if necessary thereafter.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That sort of covers one of my later questions, but that's great. I'm pleased you've covered that. So your typical standard house. What are the laws regarding things like extensions and loft conversions?
That depends largely on whether the property is detached, semi-detached, or terraced. I will go through all.
Okay.
Development types can be divided into effectively three broad areas. Permitted development, works that can be done without the requirement for formal planning permission. Prior approval development which requires the prior approval of the council, and development which requires full formal planning permission from the council. In terms of permitted development, if your dwelling is a detached dwelling, you can extend about 4 meters the rear without requiring permission as permitted development. You can extend to either side of the dwelling half the width of the original dwelling without requiring permission. A front porch can be 3 square meters without requiring permission, or no more than 3 meters in height. The regulations for roof extensions are slightly more complex, but for a detached property, you can add 50 cubic meters of extension to your dwelling without requiring permission, i.e. as permitted development. For terraced properties, the limits are 3 meters depth for a single story rear extension, or again, half the width of the original property for a side extension, and again, 3 square meters for a front porch, 3 meters in height. Dormer windows are 40 cubic meters restrictions in terms of permitted development rights. There are also other restrictions depending on the age of the property and whether you're in a conservation area or not. But I'd advise you to speak to a planning consultant if that is the case with your property, because the regulations can become quite a bit more complex. In terms of outbuildings, if you're looking to perhaps put a garden office in your rear garden, there are considerations as to the height of the building, its proximity to the boundary of the property, and indeed whether it's forward of the main house or not. But again, because the regulations are quite complex, I suggest you speak to a consultant to ascertain exactly the requirements.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting. That really is. There's just so many things there that that you just don't know unless you ask, and or you don't know these things unless you're actually about to embark on starting the process. You mentioned that if plans do get rejected, that you can go down the appeals process. But what would then change within that process from the original application?
In terms of an appeal, nothing changes with the development, the proposed development. Say you put in an application for a single-story rear extension and it was refused for whatever reason, impact on neighbours, impact on the character of the dwelling. You would have to submit the same plans to the planning inspectorate with a justification, with an explanation as to why you think the application is acceptable and should be granted permission. A planning appeal is effectively a third party looking at the application and reconsidering it in the light of the council's policies and indeed your proposed justification as to why it should be granted permission. The plans do not change between the application that was submitted to the council and the application that is submitted, or the appeal that is submitted to the inspectorate, the planning inspectorate.
Right. Okay. But I guess plans can plans be adjusted to make it fit if it's very close, if it's a grey area?
Yes. If an application is refused by a council, and this is often what people do, they enter into negotiations and discussion with the council planning department as to whether the development that's been refused can be tweaked, can be changed to make it acceptable. Perhaps it needs to be dropped back by half a metre to reduce the impact on the neighbour to an acceptable impact. Maybe it needs to be dropped by half a metre in height, such that it doesn't have an overbearing impact on the neighbour. There are many ways an application can be tweaked to make it more acceptable, and quite often, once an application has been refused, the person who has had their application refused does go back to the local authority to seek advice and guidance on how to make it acceptable, the application acceptable.
Okay, fine. That's great. Thank you very much, Tom. So just talk me through then in that case and help the people that are watching this to understand your typical planning application process from start to finish. Okay,
well, you engage the services of a planning consultant. He or she drafts the plans.
No, I said like such as yourself. Yeah, such as yourself. Yeah.
He or she needn't be an architect. Plans submitted to local planning authorities are not always drawn by architects. But once the application has been submitted, and the application is registered, usually it takes 2 or 3 days for the application to be registered. Mm-hmm. The application should be determined within 8 weeks of the date of registration. Okay. That is in accordance with government guidelines, central government guidelines. Sometimes the application can be determined a little more quickly if the council officers have a bit of spare time or are not as busy perhaps, but 8 weeks is a standard time period. An application will be granted with conditions. The first condition will be time. The application should be built within 3 years or start within 3 years of the date of the permission, and the materials of the development should match the existing dwelling. However, on occasions, there are permissions that are granted with conditions that require submission to the local planning authority. Perhaps if the materials are not clear and the council wants clarification of materials, details of the materials will have to be submitted to the local planning authority for clarification purposes. That might take another 8 weeks or so. Once any conditions have been discharged, have been agreed, you can start building works.
Fantastic. Okay.
You will also require building regulations approval. Mm-hmm. You would need to go to a building surveyor or a building consultant to discuss those requirements.
So thank you very much, Tom. That was very informative. Things are a lot clearer now in my head, and as an estate agent, it gives me more confidence when I'm out there discussing matters like this with people actually on site and on viewings. Your phone number, contact details are just here on the screen at the moment. So I guess if anybody's got any questions or anything about it, or they need a planning consultant, they've made their mind up to get in contact with you. But I'm sure you're happy to answer any questions.
Yes, of course.
No, thank you very much for joining me today. That's Tom Gabriel from Gabriel Planning Solutions.
Thank you. Goodbye.